You can call me James. I have a Astoria home in a small town. I have 2 dogs, a girlfriend, and plenty of interests. I like hobby carpentry, and I work as an electrician. I'm a bit of an audio enthusiast, and I love tinkering with sound systems. I have made my life here over the past 15 years, and I turned 13 not too long ago. But this is not a story about what I am, that's a story in and of itself. I want to tell you about something that happened to me. I moved away from my hometown years ago, and I don't have a lot of friends from that time. I had to move. I had to start my own life in a place where I could make my own choices without the past weighing me down. I don't like to talk about it, but before I was James, I was Julie. Yes, I am trans. I tried so hard to be Julie. I tried to like all the things you were supposed to like, and I tried to look the part. At times, I even enjoyed it, and I began a journey to become James. And after years of struggle and pain, I became a person I've grown to love and appreciate. I don't like to bring up the past, but sometimes you don't have a choice. Not that long ago, an old acquaintance from my hometown reached out to me. We are still on speaking terms, but we rarely talk more than once a year or so. So when they reach out, it's usually for a good reason. This time it was. They showed me a local news clip. It was a segment captured on a security camera. According to the narrator, it showed the last sighting of a man who was found dead the following day. The man was seen following an unknown woman into an alleyway, where they would later find him. The police was looking for this unknown woman, and urged people to reach out if they recognized her. Then they showed a picture of her. I'll never forget the feeling of my heart sinking into my stomach when the picture of Julie showed up on my screen. The unknown woman was all too known to me. It was someone I used to be. I was losing my god mind. It wasn't a matter of mistaken identity. It was me. It was a face I'd seen in the mirror countless times. I'd left that part of me behind, and now it was right there on the screen. Looking back on that clip, it was even my kind of clothes, my kind of hair, my kind of makeup. Overnight, people I hadn't heard from in years reached out to me. Most of them meant well, or were confused. I didn't know you changed back, someone wrote. I didn't know you could do that. Others were happy for me, explaining the joy they felt that I'd returned. But it was all about what they wanted to express. They didn't care about the reality of the situation, which was unexplainable. There was no Julie. Julie had been gone for years, and yet I was seeing her on the local news. The tipping point came when I was visited by 2 police officers. They took me out of my home and questioned me for the better part of an hour. I had to explain the reality of my life to them, that I had gone through treatment to become a new person. I had to explain it in detail, and show them that in no way, shape or form, could I still be Julie. It was physically impossible. I had to provide an alibi, and at the end of it, I still wasn't cleared. They didn't really understand. To have a life you've crafted for yourself torn out of the ground like that is devastating. To the people of my community, I'm just James. I've always just been James. But all of a sudden there were whispers, rumors. Maybe there was a little Julie left in me. They thought, maybe I was doing something I shouldn't. Maybe I was the deviant they'd always suspected. So I decided to look into it myself. Not just because I'd been accused of a crime I didn't commit, but because of something I couldn't explain. There couldn't be a Julie. And yet, there was. It was a long dive back to my hometown. I come from a particularly red part of a red state, and while I don't like to paint people in a bad light, there were those who refused to let me move on. Back then I felt like the only way to truly reinvent myself was to leave it all behind. Not just a name, or a look, but the place, and the people. It hurt more than I thought it would. Change can be painful, even if it's for the better. You lose the good things too, you know? Seeing the streets I used to walk was surreal. It's like the world had gotten smaller. The colors had faded, and the trees had grown taller. It was a town of about 18. 0, but it was shrinking year by year. You could tell. There was nothing new around. Buildings that were abandoned stayed abandoned, and people who moved away rarely came back. I suppose I was a sort of exception, but not a willing one. I checked into a motel and started a bit of an investigation of my own the following day. I asked around town to see what people had to say, referencing the news story. A couple of folks were happy to oblige, and others were a bit wary of outsiders. It was comforting in a way, being spoken to as a stranger. It reaffirmed my identity at a time when I really needed it. But a few kinda recognized me. Most didn't. I don't have a lot of photos of me online. And most of my social media profiles just have this picture of a hermit crab, my favorite animal. Something about a crab names cracks me up. I still got recognized every now and then, which completely sidelined the conversation. There was this one woman waitressing at a rest stop that used to go to my high school that instantly recognized me. But not in a good way. Your skin thickens after living my life for a while. But it's a different feeling when it's people you used to know. The jabs cut deeper, even when they mean well. You used to be so pretty. Well, screw you too, I guess. After a full day of running into walls, I decided to throw a couple Hail Marys. I figured, if this was someone trying to emulate me, maybe I should trust my own instincts. I had to put myself back in the mind of that person and work myself backwards. Where would Julie go? And what would Julie do? There used to be this space beneath the highway where I'd go with all my friends after school. We'd hang out and watch videos there all the time. Sometimes we'd share a beer, or gossip. Looking back at it, I was probably the only normal kid there. Others were going through their goth or prep phase. I was going through my Julie phase, I just didn't know it. I don't think they did either. I could have found my way back there with my eyes closed. While the path was a bit overgrown, I'd still see it bright as day, even with the sun setting on the horizon. Spring just hits differently. It makes you think of the end of school. It was the same concrete mess as always. The same columns. With the same graffiti. Some that I recognized. Some that I didn't. I traced my fingers along the familiar colors and patterns, looking for anything out of place. Admittedly, my memory was a bit hazy, but some things just stick. Like a lingering feeling after a long dream. As I sat down to ponder my next move, I knocked over a glass bottle. It looked brand new. Picking it up, I recognized it as a local brew, the kind that we used to sneak off with after school. It was my favorite, a brand new bottle. Just one, and it used to be my favorite. What are the odds? Coming back to the motel that night, I realized something. As much as it pained me, I had to put James aside. I had to think about Julie, the things she likes, the places she'd been, and a couple of ideas came to mind. For example, there had been this idea that Julie had a crush on a guy named Dawson. This was never the case. But I'd really tried to convince myself that it was even when it wasn't. Everyone was so positive about hearing it that it just felt good to spread the rumor, even when it wasn't true. It just made me feel normal for a bit. If Julie was still around, and if she was the Juliest of Julies, she'd follow Dawson around like a puppy in love. A quick search later and it turns out that Dawson never really moved out of town. He got a job at a local brewery, moved a little further out, and got married. He even had 2 kids. His social media had been set to private. His wife's wasn't though, and from the looks of it, she was unhappy. A couple of her posts were pretty telling. How do you block spam texts? Can you block text messages when they keep switching numbers? His phone stays off until you stop fucking calling. So she was still around. She was still doing Julie things. That gave me something to go on. The next day, I took a drive around town. I put on a decades-old playlist to get in the mood, but I couldn't stop cringing. All these stupid songs about the real me and being seen. I kinda wanted to grab a hold of my old self and just tell myself to stop pretending. Then again, maybe I'd get a chance to. I tried to consider what I would have done if I'd stayed in town. If I'd kept on being Julie, I probably would have gone to a trade school or taken night classes. I probably would have overcome bandits and done something overtly feminine, like cosmetology or hairdressing. To be fair, I used to be an absolute beast with makeup. I could put anyone in drag in 10 minutes flat. There was a place in the next town over where they taught cosmetology. I had a faint memory of looking through a brochure. There were even apartments one could rent there for a small fee on top of your tuition. You could also do some work in one of the salons as a part-time thing. It'd be rough without a support network, but it'd be the kind of thing Julie would have gone for. I took a drive to the next town over, and I'd completely overestimated the time. The sun had already set when I rolled off the highway. As the apartment complex loomed in the distance, I couldn't help but feel a bit divided. On the one hand, I really wanted answers. On the other, I wanted to turn my back on the whole thing. What would it mean to be right? How would I react to something impossible being real? I pulled into a parking lot and got out. I didn't know where to start. Instead, I just wandered around a bit, trying to put myself into the right frame of mind. There was this electric mope at the end of the lot. It looked cheap, but kinda cute. It had the right colors, white and a muted wintergreen, just retro enough for the old me to keep my eye on it, but modern enough to be a convenience. I could definitely see myself getting one of those back in the day. In fact, looking around the parking lot, I couldn't see any other vehicle that even remotely looked like something I'd go for. I decided to follow my gut. The mope was parked at the end of the lot. If I had an apartment, it'd have to be close by. I'd never go for a place on the first floor, so it had to be second or third. The apartment complex was unlocked, so I just wandered in. There were names printed on the doors, but none that I recognized. I just wandered floor to floor, listening, trying to catch some kind of stray vibe. I made it all the way to the third floor when a door creaked open. I held my breath. I was already sort of trespassing, and a creepy guy in an apartment complex with mainly young women might warrant some unwanted attention. I'd already talked to the cops one time too many. There was someone on the floor below. I heard someone closing the door and humming something. I couldn't put my finger on what, but it felt familiar, even though I couldn't remember the lyrics. I could feel my foot tapping on its own. It wasn't until the footsteps disappeared down the stairs that I remembered it. A Place in This World. Taylor Swift. How could I forget? That used to be my goddamn anthem. There was a small window in the hallway. Looking over the parking lot, I could see someone putting on a helmet and getting on that electric mope. It was a long shot, but I hadn't gotten this far from nothing. Checking out the apartment door, I noticed the name on it being Jolene. I felt like an idiot. That had been my nickname for a time when I went through my country phase. Of course, she wouldn't use her real name. Or maybe she was trying to distance herself from something. I thought about my next move. I could come back later, and I felt like I had to try something. Looking around, I noticed something in the corner, a crack in the floor tiles. The perfect spot for me, or Julie, to hide a spare key. And there it was. I considered stepping away, but I didn't know if I'd ever get this chance again. If I turned my back on this whole thing, could I ever live with the mystery? There had to be an explanation, and I couldn't imagine it. So despite my common sense screaming at me to think about it, I took a deep breath and went ahead. I used the spare key and stepped inside. It felt like walking back in time. The same posters, the same smells, the same coats on the coat rack. Every single thing in that place was something I would have picked out myself. Back in the day. The shoes, the white lamp with the blue sunflower pattern, the plate for the keys on the dresser. It even had these little plastic hermit crabs next to it. It was all my style. This could have been me 15 years earlier. But what bothered me the most was something small. On the dresser in the hallway, there was a series of post-it notes. The kind I'd write as a reminder to myself. Things to buy. People to call. That sort of thing. There were these everyday notes on there, but it was the way they were written that bothered me. It was my handwriting. The one thing I hadn't bothered to practice away. I walked in past a well-vacuumed 70s style rug, taking in the atmosphere of the place. The laptop in rest mode, probably ready to stream something. The spinning fan lamp overhead, still slowing down from being on all day. There were even these fridge poetry magnets in the kitchen, where you can spell out sentences with random words. I used to love those things. But looking a bit closer, those magnets told a story. It read, dream, of you, ocean, of nothing, listen, hear, old, remember, nothing. I snapped a picture of it with my phone as I heard something. Someone moving up the staircase outside. How could she be back so fast? I panicked. My first thought was hiding in the bedroom, but the bed was too close to the ground for me to fit underneath, and the wardrobe was too thin. I had to try something else. I opened the bathroom door and tried the lights, but they didn't work. I didn't have a choice though, so I hurried inside, closed the door, and felt my way to the back of the room. There was no bathtub, but a pretty sizable shower with a curtain. I could hide behind it. I heard the front door open. Good thing I'd locked it. I held my breath and closed my eyes. Something primal in me figured that if I couldn't see her, she couldn't see me. My sweaty palms pressed up against the tiled wall. Damn it, someone muttered. Where is that out? There was a deep sigh, some keys rattling, and then someone turning to leave. Got it. She called out, "I'll be there in 10. It was eerie, like hearing yourself on an old recording. As the door clicked, I was left there, panting in the dark. I almost stumbled on something as I felt my way forward, trying to find a working light switch. I couldn't find one, but felt something strange. There were these patches of warm plastic littering the sink. I couldn't remember ever feeling something like it before. There were also other shapes. Thicker, with an unusual texture. Lips, eyebrows, fingers. I didn't stop to think. Instead, I threw the door open, unlocked the front door, and hurried outside. I almost forgot to put the backup keys back, so I had to turn back when I was halfway down the stairs. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. The moment I got outside, I doubled over and did my best to hold back a scream. What the hell was I doing? I figured I'd call the police with an anonymous tip the next day. Maybe the best thing would be for me to just walk away, but then I'd never know for sure. Coming back to the motel, I took a shower and crashed. I stayed up for about an hour watching cheap reality TV. I barely had anything to eat, and a mild shake in my hand didn't let me forget it. Somewhere around midnight, I decided to get something from the vending machine. I lumbered outside and checked the codes on the machine for a bag of snacks and a root beer. It's E21. My hand froze. I turned to my left and there she was. She still looked like a 17-year-old. She had the same hair, the same clothes, and the same accessories. Even the accent that I tried to leave behind. She had her hands behind her back, bouncing back and forth on her heels, something I used to do when frustrated or excited. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. "I reckon you know who I am." She smiled back. Now, why the fuck are you following me? What are you talking about? You think I wouldn't find you?" She answered, like I couldn't put myself in your shoes. She stepped closer. I stepped back. She found that amusing and crossed her arms. Her cheek twitched a little, but she blinked it away. "I'm my own person," she continued. "You don't get to fuck with that. I don't even know what you are." I said, "You can't be. I'm Julie." She interrupted. "You can't be." "But I am." Before I could protest, she stomped her foot. As she did, she got this sudden limp on her right side. Like part of her body fell out of balance. Her hand shot up to her face, and I could see something loosen at the edge of her cheek. Like air in the skin. "If you fuck with me, I'll make ribbons from your lungs." Her voice was different. It had a higher pitch, and a whistle to it. She was leaking air through her throat, like a balloon. She was so angry that she was breaking at the seams. She had a twitch to her head, like a wounded insect. Her face seemed to be acting up, making her blink like she got something stuck in her eye. She never turned her back on me, but she stepped away. By the time she rounded a corner, I could tell she was limping, not from pain, but imbalance. Hurrying back into my room, I felt like I was having a panic attack. My mind was racing. I locked my door and pulled the curtains. I checked the windows. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was like I'd seen an alien. It was something that couldn't be. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was so far out of my worldview that I couldn't wrap my head around it. I called my girlfriend, but ended up stammering. I couldn't explain what I'd seen. Instead, I just said that I'd been threatened. She was still being rational about this whole thing and made me promise to listen. She pleaded with me. She told me to go home first thing in the morning and to call the police. So that was the plan. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I knew better than to dig any deeper. Early the next morning, I checked out, got in my car, and called the police. I left an anonymous tip about the murderer, telling them the address. They asked me for details and contact information, but I just hung up. I was done, and I was going home. This whole trip had made me sick, and I couldn't wait to leave Julie behind once and for all. I was on the road before the morning fog cleared. I made some decent distance in a couple of hours and decided to stop for a sandwich. There was this great place that I used to stop at with my parents when we went to see my aunt in the summer, and I figured that'd be a nice goodbye to that part of my life as I left for a final time. I pumped some gas, got my sandwich, and went to use the restroom. As I turned to close the door, I saw something in the distance, just off the side of the parking lot, leaning up against a tree. Electro-style wintergreen electric mopes. A large hand slammed the door shut, locked the door, and turned off the lights. I was standing there in the dark, hearing two sets of breaths, one of which was right across from me. "You couldn't just let me go," Julie whispered. "You couldn't leave me alone. I don't even know what you are." I said, "But you're not Julie. You can't be." There was no response. I could hear her breathing grow deeper, longer, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to say something. "Are you even human?" There was a painful sound, like the simultaneous eruption of a groan and a sob, and something unsettling like human. A frustrated grunt. She was pacing, as if trying to calm herself. I kept hearing a smacking sound, like she was slapping herself. "No," she muttered. "No, no, no, no. Calm. I'm Julie. I'm Julie. Me." Something split, like a ripe tomato hitting the floor. Something coarse scratched against the bathroom tiles. Deep breaths rose higher into the air as something wet slapped against the floor with a thud. Several sharp things tapped against the bathroom tiles on both sides of the restroom, at least 8 feet wide. I'm not okay. No, not oh, fuck." A silence filled the room. I could hear the blood pumping in my ears as my fingers ran cold. Something in the dark was moving ever so slightly. A voice pierced the air. A low rumbling, like a stalling engine. A painful, unnatural moan. "I can't go back. I can't." Before I could speak, something pushed against my face. A blunted spike. First it touched my nose. Then it pushed into my nostrils. Then my ears. A sliver tickled as it slipped under my eyelid, and all the way into the back of my throat. I tasted blood. I smelled blood. I could hear cartilage breaking from the inside out as I fell backwards, lifting a foot into the air by my head alone. Then, nothing. It wasn't painful. It's strange to say, but it wasn't. Julie was changing, taking over. She was consuming not just my body, but my identity. She was slouching off whatever she'd been and turned to become something new me. I could feel a part of James being tossed out, like gutting the soul of a fish. I'm sure you've heard of near-death experiences. People looking down on their own bodies from above. That's what I felt, but from a completely different perspective. I wasn't looking down at my body. I was looking back at this thing. I think it literally attached itself to my brain stem, sending a shock of impressions through my nervous system. I'd been right. It wasn't human, but it wasn't really anything. It was half finished, partial, something from another place that had forgotten what it was like to be a person. It was in pain, and desperate to feel something physical, something real. So it had floated into space where people can't be, and it had dreamt of forgotten things, things thrown away. And in that space, it had seen something beautiful and abandoned Julie. The impressions felt like watching life through shadows on the wall. Intentional, but only indication. Unreal. It had taken something it thought abandoned and believed itself to be something new. It refused to be told what it could and couldn't be. It was human because it had to be. It couldn't go back. It couldn't return to being nothing. The dead man had been a challenge. He had recognized Julie, and when he told her she couldn't be Julie, she'd done what she'd done today. Attacked, and her loosely worn dream had torn at the seams, revealing something unreal, inhuman, and dangerous. And now she was doing it again. "You're killing me," I thought. "You're killing everything." I could feel my lips moving, stopped only by something coarse brushing against my teeth, like the bristles of a steel brush. "I'll be who I need to be." I could feel my arms moving, my legs straightening, something trying to adjust from the inside out. But there was trouble there, a discomfort. "You don't like it," I thought. "You don't want to be James." It didn't think back. It hesitated. The shadows playing in my mind stopped to listen. "If you're Julie, you can't also be James. You don't get to decide who I am." I could feel frustration, hands pulling at hair, feet stomping, trying to feel the size of their shoes. Deep, uncomfortable breaths, smacking their tongue from a distasteful sensation. Julie didn't like this. She didn't. "Just go back," I thought. "You'll be you. I'll be me. Fuck you. Just walk away." I insisted, and never looked back. No. There was a throbbing pain in my back as I was dropped to the ground. There was distance, but still there. Something curled around my neck, pressing on my windpipe. It was afraid. It just wanted to be Julie. It wanted there to be no more questions, no more people, It didn't want to spin a new web into a body. The repairs would take weeks. It didn't have enough patches. But even at the lair, it would have to get a new lair. Now that the police had raided it. You fucked up. It groaned. You fucked it all up. You can't just take something. I thought. It's not yours. It was getting harder to think. The shadows in my mind were fading. It was just colors in a river. Recognition glinting in a deepening stream. Like fool's gold. She's mine. It rumbled. As recognition faded. Like dying stars. A single thought crossed my mind. You can have her. It felt like having roots pulled out of my core. Something pulling back. Leaving my face bloodied and bruised. The restroom door opened ajar, letting in a glimpse of light. Something large and inhuman covered the exit, gently caressing an empty human body. A familiar blonde head hung loose. Like a stringless puppet. Something sharp and claw-like stroked her head. Cared for her. I don't want to be James. It groaned. I tried to say something, but I choked on a loose tooth. I spat it out with a deep red glob. As Julie slipped out the door and into the adjoining woods. The last thing I heard was that same hum and whistle as before. That same tune. A place in this world. I told them I was attacked. It wasn't an unlikely story. Given my identity and location. People had done worse for less. I think it got on the news. But I made it home eventually. I got my insurance money. I got to play with my dogs and kiss my girlfriend. All those things that I thought, for a moment, that I'd lose forever. And I made it back. And it's all still here. All the wonderful, beautiful things that I built for myself. The little columns that hold up my overpass. Far away from the insecurities and anxieties of my youth. I'm sure there's still a Julie out there somewhere, but I haven't seen her. I figure she'll make an effort to never be near me ever again. That's a relief. I suppose. I guess we don't think too much about the things we leave behind. But in nature, things that are left behind are picked up all the time. Just look at hermit crabs. I don't know if I'll ever come to terms with having her out there. If I were to guess, she's still whistling her songs. And making plans of her own. And maybe, if she's lucky, she can get away with it for a little longer. And I pray, every day, that I'll never see her again.